The morning air was crisp, holding the promise of autumn and new beginnings. Every detail, meticulously chosen, reflected the joy I felt. My dress, a cascade of ivory lace, felt like a second skin. The venue, bathed in soft, natural light, awaited its purpose. This was not just a wedding, it was the culmination of dreams, a sacred vow to build a future with the man I loved. Everything was in its place, perfectly orchestrated, a symphony of hope about to begin. I remember the quiet hum of excitement, the gentle flutter in my chest. It truly felt like a fairy tale, moments from unfolding. And then, there was Clara. My sister, standing beside me, her smile a seemingly perfect reflection of my own happiness. She was my maid of honor, a role she'd campaigned for with surprising fervor. We had a complicated history, as most sisters do, but on this day, I believed we had set it aside. Her assurances, her constant presence during planning, her whispered words of excitement, they all felt genuine. I wanted to believe in that closeness, to let the past remain in the past. Her hand gripped mine just before I walked down the aisle, a comforting, familiar pressure. I mistook it for solidarity. The ceremony unfolded beautifully. Vows were exchanged, rings placed, and the first kiss as husband and wife sealed our commitment. It was during the reception, a moment of pure, unadulterated joy, that the unraveling began. A projector flickered to life, unexpected, on the grand hall's wall. Not the slideshow we'd prepared, but something else entirely. Whispers rippled through the room. Laughter died. My husband's face, a second ago alight with happiness, became a mask of confusion, then horror. My own heart, previously soaring, plunged into a cold, hollow abyss. The air grew thick with unspoken questions. What played out on the screen was a fabricated narrative, a mosaic of doctored emails, manipulated images, and distorted audio recordings. It painted my husband as a deceptive, opportunistic man who had, allegedly, only pursued me for my family's modest inheritance. The evidence was convincing, cleverly stitched together to appear authentic. It wasn't about a past mistake, it was a character assassination, a malicious attack designed to poison the well of our new marriage before it even began. Each fabricated fact was a dagger, twisting deeper with every passing second, aiming not just at him, but at our trust, our love, our future. The room fell silent, then erupted in hushed conversations. My husband's family looked at him with confusion, then suspicion. My own relatives, embarrassed, averted their gaze. I felt a cold dread creep through my veins, not for myself, but for the man standing beside me, whose integrity was being publicly shredded. It was a silent, internal scream. My mind, usually quick, was frozen, trying to process the impossible. Who would do this? And why? I looked at Clara, my sister, across the room. Her expression was carefully neutral, but a flicker, a fleeting spark of triumph in her eyes, caught mine. In that moment, the world shifted. The projection ended, leaving behind a lingering stain on the joyous occasion. My husband, pale but resolute, took my hand. We exchanged no words, only a silent pact of defiance against the insidious attack. The remaining reception was a blur of polite but strained conversation. Guests left early, their departures marked by awkward apologies and hurried goodbyes. We didn't shout, didn't demand explanations. We simply absorbed the damage. The cake remained largely uneaten. The dance floor, once promised to be vibrant, stood empty. The echoes of a beautiful day, brutally interrupted, resonated in the cavernous hall. The silence spoke volumes. Clara and I had always been different. I was the quieter, more academically inclined one, she, the charismatic, socially dominant sibling. Growing up, I'd often mistaken her possessiveness for protection, her sharp criticism for concern. But beneath the surface, a vein of envy ran deep. She thrived on attention, on being the central figure. My engagement, my happiness, my future with a man she couldn't control or outshine, it must have been intolerable. This wasn't merely sabotage, it was an act of complete demolition, intended to obliterate my happiness and assert her perceived dominance. The seeds of this specific malice had been sown long ago. That night, surrounded by the remnants of a shattered dream, a cold resolve settled within me. There were no tears, no hysterics. Just a profound, chilling clarity. My husband, devastated but unwavering, stood by me. We spent hours dissecting the evidence, tracing its inconsistencies, identifying its digital fingerprints. It was a sophisticated operation, meticulously planned. And as we pieced together the puzzle, Clara's subtle cues, her knowing glances, her two perfect alibis, began to crystallize into an undeniable truth. The grief was immense, but it was overshadowed by a quiet, burgeoning fury. This wasn't anger. This was something far deeper, far more dangerous. It was a seed of vengeance, planted in the ruins of my wedding day. The morning after, we made a pact. No public accusations. No screaming matches. No tabloid drama. That would only feed her ego, giving her the very attention she craved. Our revenge would be different. It would be quiet, precise, and utterly devastating. It would be a truth-telling, not a spectacle. My husband, bless his steady heart, understood completely. He knew the depths of betrayal I felt, not just as a wife, but as a sister. He became my silent partner, my anchor in the storm. This wasn't about vindication for him, but for me. We would play the long game, a game she wouldn't even realize she was in until it was far too late. And so began my year. A year not of mourning, but of purpose. I returned to my routines, outwardly composed, but internally, a vast, intricate clockwork had begun to turn. Every interaction with Clara became a data point, every casual remark, a potential clue. I observed her, listened to her, studied her life with the detached scrutiny of a forensic investigator. She never suspected. She saw only the resilient sister, picking up the pieces. She saw only a quiet calm, not the steel beneath. She would occasionally offer condolences, always with that same, carefully neutral expression. She had no idea the silence was a weapon, not a surrender. My initial task was to map her world. Clara was, on the surface, incredibly successful. A rising star in a prominent PR firm, she had a carefully curated social media presence, a wide circle of influential friends, and a serious long-term relationship with a kind, unsuspecting man named Mark. She had built a fortress of reputation and connection. These were her strengths, her pillars. And like any fortress, they had foundations. I began to identify those foundations, understanding how they were constructed, and, more importantly, where their weaknesses lay. This was not about random destruction, but about targeted deconstruction. I began with her digital footprint. Clara was meticulous, but no one is truly invisible online. Public records, archived social media posts, old forum discussions, they all left traces. I wasn't looking for scandal, but for patterns. Inconsistencies. Small omissions that, when layered, painted a different picture. I discovered her knack for subtle manipulation, her history of bending the truth to her advantage, even in seemingly minor situations. These weren't crimes, but they revealed a character flaw, a propensity for deceit that underscored her actions at my wedding. It was like tracing a hidden river flowing beneath a manicured garden. Her career was her pride. Clara projected an image of unwavering professionalism, integrity, and client dedication. I started looking into her past projects, her former colleagues, even anonymous industry forums. I found whispers of credit taken for others' work, of clients subtly steered towards choices that benefited Clara's portfolio more than their actual needs. Nothing overtly illegal, but a steady current of ethical corner-cutting. Each instance, on its own, was negligible. Together, they formed a mosaic of opportunism. Her professionalism was a facade, meticulously maintained, but resting on a foundation of self-serving ambition. Then there was Mark. He was Clara's fiancé, a genuinely good man, kind and steady, deeply in love with her. He was her emotional anchor, the one person who seemed truly untouched by her competitive nature. This made him a vulnerability, but not in the way one might think. I had no desire to cause him pain directly. My goal was to reveal Clara's true character, to expose the person behind the mask, and if that truth inevitably affected his perception of her, then that was a consequence of her own actions. He deserved the truth, just as my husband and I had deserved a wedding day free of malicious lies. My focus was on clarity, not destruction. My revenge was not about confrontation. It was about allowing her carefully constructed world to collapse under the weight of its own inherent untruths. I wasn't going to accuse her. I was going to provide paths for the truth to be discovered by those around her, independently. The trick was to be untraceable, a ghost in the machine. Every piece of information I would leak or plant had to appear organic, accidental even. It had to emerge from within her own ecosystem, not from me. This required an almost artistic level of misdirection, a deep understanding of human psychology and information flow. Patience was my greatest tool. First, I revisited the wedding day sabotage. We had forensic evidence of the digital manipulation. But proving Clara's direct involvement, beyond my own intuition, was harder. I needed undeniable proof, something that couldn't be dismissed as coincidence or an elaborate frame-up. I meticulously re-examined every interaction, every shared file, every casual mention of technology Clara had made in the weeks leading up to the wedding. I even considered the possibility of an accomplice, someone she might have enlisted for the technical execution. The complexity of the attack suggested more than casual maliciousness, it spoke of premeditated, calculated intent. It was in an old shared cloud drive, meant for wedding photo drafts, that I found it. Hidden deep within a folder Clara rarely accessed, disguised as a corrupted font file, was a zipped archive. It contained the raw, unedited footage and audio that had been manipulated, along with the source files for the fabricated emails. And crucially, a series of internal notes, timestamped, detailing the plan. The exact points of attack, the specific vulnerabilities to exploit. The perpetrator's identity was obscured, but the file's metadata pointed directly to Clara's personal devices. The cold, hard evidence I needed, staring back at me. It was everything. The evidence, now secured, wouldn't be presented to Clara. Instead, it would find its way to someone who could use it effectively, without me being the source. I had observed a subtle rivalry between Clara and a senior colleague at her PR firm, a woman named Eleanor. Eleanor was ambitious, respected, and had lost out on a major promotion to Clara months prior. A carefully anonymized package, containing the digital evidence and a neutral, factual summary, was sent to Eleanor's personal email. The subject line was innocuous, Industry Trends Insight. It was a breadcrumb trail, designed to be discovered, not handed over. The seed was planted. I tracked the digital breadcrumbs. Eleanor, as anticipated, opened the package. The initial curiosity would give way to professional intrigue, then shock. A colleague sabotaging a wedding using such sophisticated means? It would be professionally devastating. Not for me, but for Clara. Eleanor, driven by her own ambition and a keen sense of justice, would see the implications immediately. This wasn't just about my wedding, it was about professional ethics, reputation, and the integrity of her firm. I had no doubt she would investigate further, discreetly, drawing her own conclusions. My involvement remained a whisper, a distant echo. Nothing more. This was about the truth, revealed by her own circle. Weeks passed. I saw Clara less, but heard about her more. Whispers began in our shared social circles. Not about the wedding, but about Clara's stress at work, the unusual scrutiny she was under. Her social media updates became less frequent, less effusive. The fortress, once seemingly impenetrable, developed its first hairline cracks. She dismissed these changes as minor, typical workplace drama. But I knew. I saw the subtle shift in her posture, the slight tremor in her voice when she talked about her job. The meticulous, years-long construction of her professional image was now under internal review, by someone she trusted. The silence was beginning to work. Eleanor's investigation, I later learned, unearthed more than just the wedding sabotage. The deeper she dug into Clara's past projects, the more she found corroborating evidence of the ethical corner-cutting I had merely observed. Overbilling, inflated performance metrics, subtle misrepresentations to clients, they all came to light. The wedding incident became the lens through which her entire career was re-evaluated. It exposed a pattern, a character trait, rather than an isolated lapse. The carefully cultivated image of the brilliant, ethical PR executive shattered. Her ambition, once a strength, became her fatal flaw, consuming her from the inside out. The professional repercussions were swift, yet contained. She wasn't publicly fired, but resigned citing personal reasons. The truth, however, rippled through the industry. Former clients grew suspicious, colleagues distanced themselves. Her network, once vast and supportive, began to retract. Clara, who thrived on external validation, found herself isolated, her calls unanswered, her emails unreturned. It was a slow-motion car crash, witnessed only by those directly involved. The professional world, a stage where she had always shone, now held her in contempt. The first pillar of her fortress crumbled, silently, meticulously. Next, her friendships. Clara had a tight-knit circle of friends, cultivated over years. These friendships were largely built on shared experiences and a certain perception of Clara as fiercely loyal and supportive. I didn't directly approach any of them. Instead, I carefully, subtly, directed their attention towards her inconsistencies. A seemingly accidental email forwarding a conversation where Clara subtly badmouthed a mutual friend. A dropped hint about her past exaggerations regarding shared achievements. Nothing damning on its own, but enough to plant seeds of doubt, to encourage them to look closer at the friend they thought they knew. These were her closest allies, after all. Friends, unlike professional contacts, operate on emotional trust. Clara's careful omissions, her subtle manipulations, when seen through a newly critical lens, began to sting. They remembered instances where she had been less than truthful, less than supportive, more self-serving than sisterly. The small slights, once dismissed, now accumulated into a mountain of betrayal. Her social media persona, once flawless, now seemed performative. One by one, calls became less frequent, invitations stopped coming. She wasn't dramatically cancelled, she simply faded from their inner circle. The second pillar, her social standing, quietly eroded. No fanfare, just silence. The most sensitive part of my plan involved Mark. I believed he deserved the truth, but I would not be the one to deliver it. I knew Clara kept a detailed, private journal on her old laptop, documenting everything, her triumphs, her grievances, her true feelings about people. It was a habit from her teenage years she never broke. I knew its location, her old password logic. An anonymous, encrypted message was sent to Mark, containing a single hint: look in her old laptop. Journal file, folder unsent. Password is Clarashart. He found it. He found the entries detailing her envy, her resentment towards me, her calculated plan to ruin my wedding. He found her true self. Mark's reaction was one of profound heartbreak. He confronted her, not with anger, but with quiet, bewildered pain. The detailed accounts in her journal left no room for denial. He saw the cold calculation, the sustained malice, directed not only at me but reflected in her casual disdain for others she deemed inferior. The woman he loved, the woman he was about to marry, was a stranger. Their engagement ended swiftly, quietly. There was no drama, no public spectacle. Just the quiet, devastating implosion of a relationship built on a carefully constructed lie. The final pillar of her fortress, her most intimate connection, had crumbled. Silently. Irreversibly. A year had passed since my wedding day. A year since the quiet devastation. Clara, now isolated professionally, socially, and romantically, was a shadow of her former self. Her world, once so robust, had been systematically dismantled. Not by my hand directly, but by the relentless exposure of her own truths. She had destroyed my happiest day with a calculated lie. I had allowed her own lies to destroy her life. The cycle was complete. I never spoke to her about it. I never needed to. The silence, which had started as a burden of grief, became the ultimate instrument of justice. My anger had long since dissipated, replaced by a quiet, profound sense of equilibrium. The weight of truth is immense. It does not require volume or aggression. It simply exists, and when brought to light, it reshapes everything. Clara's life, once a shining testament to her ambition, was now a quiet testament to her deceit. I had not sought to physically harm her, or financially ruin her beyond the natural consequences of her actions. I sought only for the truth to be known by those whose lives she had touched. And that truth, once unleashed, carried its own devastating power. It was a power that needed no audience to be felt, no witness to be effective. It was the quiet, undeniable force of reality. My own life, in contrast, had slowly, steadily, healed. My husband and I had faced the ultimate test of trust and emerged stronger. The memories of our wedding day were still tinged with pain, but they were no longer defined by it. We held a small, intimate ceremony a few months later, just for ourselves, reaffirming our vows without external pressure or fear of sabotage. It was quiet, sacred, and infinitely more meaningful. We built our future not on the rubble of that first day, but on the bedrock of honesty and unwavering support. The scar remained, but it had healed, a testament to endurance. This experience taught me the profound power of patience. Anger demands immediate gratification, a loud, cathartic release. But patience, combined with resolve, allows for a deeper, more enduring form of justice. It allows for the truth to surface at its own pace, through its own channels, making its impact all the more profound because it feels organic, not engineered. It bypasses the drama and goes straight for the foundation. There is a quiet strength in waiting, in meticulously preparing, in understanding that not every wrong needs to be righted with a raised voice. Some truths are best delivered in a whisper. Did it come at a cost? Of course. The year was emotionally taxing, filled with a controlled intensity that never fully relented. The grief for the sister I thought I had, and the relationship that could have been, was real. But the cost of not acting, of allowing such a profound betrayal to stand unchallenged, would have been far greater. It would have meant living with a lie, with a perpetrator walking free and unexposed. My peace was purchased with the systematic dismantling of hers. It was not a celebratory act, but a necessary one. A heavy price, paid in silent resolve. There was no public fanfare, no dramatic reveal. Clara never knew, not definitively, that I was the unseen hand. And that was precisely the point. The devastation was internal, experienced by her as a series of unfortunate, unconnected events. Her downfall was her own doing, illuminated by the consequences of her original betrayal. I never needed an audience for my revenge. The satisfaction came not from her public humiliation, but from the quiet restoration of truth, and the knowledge that she could no longer hide behind her carefully constructed illusions. Her self-deception, finally, became her prison. The scars of that wedding day will always remain. They are a reminder of vulnerability, of trust shattered, but also of resilience. They remind me that some wounds heal, but leave behind indelible marks. This story isn't about celebrating vengeance, it's about understanding the insidious nature of betrayal and the profound, quiet strength it takes to reclaim one's narrative. It's about finding justice not in an explosion of anger, but in the slow, methodical unveiling of truth. It is a testament to the fact that even in quiet devastation, an unwavering spirit can forge a path towards healing and profound self-possession. We often seek justice in grand gestures, in public condemnation. But sometimes, the most potent form of justice is a personal one, a restoration of balance witnessed only by those directly affected. My sister's actions tried to define me, to define my marriage. My response, however quiet, defined her. It unmasked her, not to the world, but to herself, and to those closest to her. That, for me, was enough. It was a reclaiming of power, a quiet assertion that betrayal would not go unanswered, even if the answer was delivered with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel, rather than the roar of a cannon. A quiet, yet profound, definition. As I look back on that year, I see not a period of bitterness, but one of intense focus and unexpected growth. It was a crucible that forged a stronger, more discerning version of myself. My husband and I now approach life with a heightened sense of discernment, a deeper appreciation for genuine connection, and an unwavering commitment to honesty. The noise of that shattered wedding day has long faded, replaced by the quiet strength of a love that was tested and found unbreakable. The path forward is not without shadows, but it is clear, illuminated by the hard-won light of truth and the enduring power of quiet resolve. What remains is not hatred, but a profound understanding of human nature, of envy's corrosive power, and the quiet resilience of the human spirit. What remains is a marriage built on a foundation stronger than any betrayal, a bond forged in fire. And what remains, perhaps most importantly, is the realization that justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it whispers. Sometimes, it simply allows the truth to breathe, and in that breath, entire worlds can collapse, quietly, irrevocably. The end of a chapter, the beginning of true peace. This story is a testament to the power of that quiet resolve.